Hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. So now, here comes Ebola. My first thought was like, okay, the hantavirus didn't really work. We debunked that. That wasn't going to be a problem, so they got to come up with something else. But then as I start to dig into the Ebola situation, they may have been planning this for a while. They had millions of dollars that were being set to go to an Ebola vaccine just 4 months before the WHO now comes out and says Ebola is going to be a big concern. Now, don't get me wrong. I remember years ago, it probably was, it was more than a decade ago, when there was an Ebola case in Dallas, and this poor guy, it was brutal, man. I mean, he was throwing up projectile diarrhea and vomit all over. Like, it was horrible. And the people that had to care for him was horrible. And this really gripped Dallas, the fear of Ebola. I don't want Ebola in the United States. Unlike the hantavirus, well, Ebola is hard to spread too, but Ebola just seems brutal, man. Like, if you get it, it is a brutal, brutal virus. But what is fact and fiction? What are the chances of you really getting it? And then there's this situation of this scientist, an NIH scientist, gets caught with, we're told, monkeypox samples coming through the airport, headed to a lab in Montana. But the belief is among some that he may have had Ebola samples with him. That would be a big problem. Tim Sheehy, the congressman from Montana, is now calling for an investigation into that. So as the mainstream media says, no, this is all just unconfirmed conspiracy theories, you got a city congressman calling for an investigation. The problem with me is the secrecy that surrounds everything right now in government. So we'll try to break down fact from fiction. Nicholas Hulscher is my guest. He's with the wellness company. He's a fabulous epidemiologist. He's conducted so many studies on this stuff. Nobody better to talk to about this issue. And speaking of that, the wellness company is where you want to go. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. With all these potential, pandemics, plandemics, whatever they may be, you want to get yourself a contagion kit from the wellness company. Hydroxychloroquine in there, ivermectin, shown great promise in treating things like hantavirus, like Ebola, and those types of things. So go to the website, twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT just to make sure you and your family are safe and you don't have to worry. And that's the real thing. It's a peace of mind deal. Get one. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT. All right, with that, folks, let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right. Welcome, everybody. So, as promised, Nicholas Hulscher is my guest today. Of course, he's with the wellness company. Nicholas, it's great to have you back on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm not wrong when I tell you Ebola is a brutal virus, isn't it?
Ebola's bad. Ebola's bad. You do not want to get Ebola. It does, at least in Africa, it ranges from the strain, but about 40 to 60% case fatality rate. Now, again, that's in Africa where they're, it's not the same conditions as a developed country, and they don't get any early treatment. They don't have great supportive care in the hospital. So, that fatality rate would probably be lower, much lower in the United States. But yeah, you do not want to contract Ebola.
I remember when this guy I mentioned in Dallas had Ebola, the healthcare workers would be all dressed in the hazmat suits. They talked about this guy projectile vomiting across a room with like jet propulsion force. And I just remember thinking to myself, this sounds awful.
Yeah. So it can cause that. It can cause, in severe cases, these hemorrhagic fevers. So you kind of just start to bleed out of your blood vessels. And but that's if it progresses, to an advanced stage. So yeah, again, it's not something you want to come into contact with, but it doesn't spread very easily. It does not spread very easily.
So explain to me why it doesn't spread easily and why we can take a little more solace in the fact that we're probably not going to see massive amounts of people coming down with Ebola.
Yeah, so you can only contract Ebola if you have direct physical contact with infected bodily fluids. So that includes blood, urine, feces, large amounts of sweat, large amounts of saliva. Like, you have to physically come into contact with that from a symptomatic person, right? So it's not asymptomatic spread. So those conditions will make it quite difficult to cause a global pandemic and spread efficiently. But obviously, in Africa, it's different. Sometimes they're very crammed. They have these funerals where they kiss the dead bodies. And so, you're more likely to see larger outbreaks there. But so I'm not totally concerned about a global pandemic spreading efficiently in Western countries.
All right. I was watching your podcast, and I found it interesting when you gave the odds of what it would be for Americans. Was it catching Ebola or dying from Ebola or both?
Yeah. So currently, right now, with no spread of this Bundybujo, the new strain in the U.S., so as of this time, the current chance of the average American contracting Ebola is 1 in 1.5 billion. So, yeah.
So 1 in 1, I mean, you have got a better chance of getting hit by lightning.
Yeah, you're over 1,000 times more likely to get hit by lightning at this point in time.
All right, so why do we have the WHO coming out now and really sounding the alarm on all of this?
The WHO appears to be using extortion tactics. They're very angry the United States withdrew from the World Health Organization. And they're also their pandemic treaty negotiations. They're trying to lock in all of their member states, basically to have total health control over them. Those negotiations are stalling significantly, so they can't put that treaty into place. And so it appears they're trying to now all of a sudden push out all of this fear mongering, these new outbreaks, in an attempt to force the U.S. back in, get us back in, get us under their control, as well as cement their pandemic treaty negotiations. So we saw hantavirus failed. That's going to be likely a dead end outbreak. And so now they're moving on to Ebola.
Look, we've shut down travel now from these African countries where the Ebola is. And I'm cool with that. Let me play you a clip of President Trump, and then I'll let you weigh in on what he says here. This is yesterday.
Ebola, you said Ebola.
Yeah. Should Americans be concerned about Ebola?
I'm concerned about everything, but certainly am. I think that, it's been confined right now to Africa, but it's something that has had a breakout. I could ask Bobby or Oz to say a couple of words about it if you'd like.
So he says he's concerned about it. They shut down travel. You think that was a good idea, or is that an overreaction?
Well, I think that's a good idea, because we don't want to import any cases for sure. And, as long as we keep it out, that risk of us contracting Ebola will stay at 1 in 1.5 billion. Now, that chance will change if we start to import cases from Africa. So I think that was a good call for sure. What we have to be on the lookout for is basically mass PCR testing. We hope they don't try and roll out some sort of flawed tests. Everybody starts to get tested, and then all of a sudden we'll have these cases, false positives, etc., of Ebola popping up. So we really have to stay vigilant when it comes to the World Health Organization, whose number one funder is nobody other than Bill Gates and his foundation.
All right. And, you mentioned the World Health Organization. The other one you got to watch out for is the media. So this was a report by CBS. What I thought I would do is play it and start and stop it, and we'll go over some of their the reporters' comments here. All right. So this is, I believe it just came out yesterday, the day before, about Ebola in Africa.
In Congo's Ituri province, health officials are battling a new Ebola outbreak. The Africa CDC says there are 246 suspected cases and at least 65 people dead, the highest death toll from the disease in years. The World Health Organization is concerned.
Well, we know very well that the country has experience, but the region where it is happening is highly volatile, with the humanitarian situation going on and the population moving around from South Sudan to Uganda and other parts.
Government.
So first there, She gives the number 246. They've got the hazmat suits. That's designed to scare you as well. And then you've got the World Health Organization. I guess that's Tedros talking about the movement of people around the area. Your thoughts on what she laid out there so far?
Yeah, so they're just giving a general overview of that situation. And one thing we have to keep in mind is there's been about 17 Ebola outbreaks already since the 70s in the Congo. And in fact, just a few years ago, 2018, 2020, there was outbreaks with thousands of cases. And so, this isn't necessarily, just some brand new type of thing, but they're making it sound like it is.
So the 246, it sounds like a big number, but when you relate it to other outbreaks, even recent ones, does it fall into about what we've seen when it comes to deaths or less?
Yeah, it's about the same fatality rate, it appears. Where they're really pushing the fear on this one is they're claiming it's much larger than what they've identified because they claim they've caught it too late. So, again, we'll have to wait and see what that outcome is. But the biggest thing about it is it's not airborne, and it's just not going to spread efficiently among communities in America.
Let's listen to a little bit more of her.
Officials confirmed the outbreak has now spread to Uganda.
Medical professionals seem very concerned about the possibility or the ability to contain this. Why is that compared to other times?
It's already a big outbreak at the point that we're hearing about it. There have already been a number of deaths, and this is a strain of Ebola for which we have no treatment, no vaccines.
All right, so first, she says medical professionals seem to be very concerned. I would consider you a medical professional. You don't seem too concerned. So they only talk to the ones that are concerned to scare you, right? I mean, they didn't interview you, did they? Or Dr. McCullough or Dr. Thorpe or anybody else like that.
No, they're only interviewing the same people who during the COVID pandemic, pushed lockdowns, masks, and mRNA injections. I saw yesterday Peter Hotez is back on CNN saying he's terrified. We don't have any vaccines. We need vaccines. But they did already start working on a vaccine for the Bundibugyo strain, the same strain we now see in this new outbreak 4 months ago. With Moderna, Bill Gates' CEPI, the Center for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation, he co-founded it. They literally gave $26 million to Moderna and University of Oxford to develop mRNA injections and viral vector injections for this very strain.
Nicholas, I don't believe in coincidence. 4 months ago, you give a $26 million grant to come up with an Ebola vaccine, and then 4 months later, you've got the WHO pushing an Ebola outbreak that's going to be the end of the world. There's no way this is a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't believe it's a coincidence. There must have been some sort of foreknowledge. We know they had clear foreknowledge for COVID-19 with Event 201. And so, that's why it's important to look at what occurred in the past few months before an outbreak is declared. And that will usually tell us the motives behind it.
She said this strain, there's no cure. Are there cures for the other strains?
They claim they have effective vaccines for the other one, but again, I don't know if I trust their terminology of effective. So this particular strain, the Bundibugyo, there's nothing approved for it. But again, this is what the World Health Organization does. They'll always say there's nothing you can do except a vaccine. They won't tell you to have adequate vitamin D levels. They won't tell you to be healthy, exercise, make sure you're not overweight. They won't tell you to eat wholesome foods filled with all the vitamins and minerals you need. They won't tell you to use zinc. They won't tell you to use hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. And they'll tell you nothing works. And it's usually 100% BS because they want to sell you a vaccine.
Yeah. So it looks like the same old tricks again. let me play a little more because it gets, in my opinion, it gets even a little more rich here.
Virus spreads through direct contact with blood and other bodily fluids. Dr. Craig Spencer contracted Ebola while working in Guinea in 2014.
Healthcare workers are the group that I'm really concerned about because they have very close contact with people when they're most contagious, particularly around the time of folks' death.
And the U.S. has been the single largest external player in Ebola response in the past. Now experts are worried that the dismantling of USAID and the U.S. withdrawing from the World Health Organization could have an impact in the global efforts to contain the virus.
All right, so there you go. See, the sales pitch at the end. We shut down USAID and all the NGOs that were stealing money from the American taxpayer with no good coming out of it. We withdraw from the World Health Organization, and now they instill the fear that it was reckless of us to do these things. We've got to get back in it. That's what she's saying, right?
Yep, she's saying that, and they're all saying it. That's now the propaganda talking point that they're now all pushing, and this is obviously a coordinated effort. We know the mass media, those mainstream media outlets, are captured by interests related to the World Health Organization, Gates Foundation, etc. So it's very easy for them to kind of push everything at one time, like we saw with COVID. And so it's concerning. It's concerning. You know, they still haven't been held accountable for what happened during COVID. Remember the disaster that was? Everything was wrong. Millions of deaths from the mRNA injections they pushed, the lockdowns, all the nonsense, the hospital protocols, the defaming of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Everything they did resulted in millions of casualties. And now here they are trying to act like we have to support them.
All right. I do want to talk about, you've got the money. The whole thing is a money play and a fear campaign as well, because I think they do like to test to see how far they can push us to be scared. But the money play is they want USAID and they want World Health Organization funded. But the other side of that is what you've already touched on as well, is the vaccine side of that. I've got a soundbite that will just prove that to be the case here in a second. But Nicholas, maybe I could ask you, this contagion kit by the wellness company. We got the hantavirus that's out there. It doesn't look like it's going to be too bad, but I always say peace of mind having this kit in your home. Can you explain why it is so good to have one of these kits in the home?
Yeah, it's a good idea to have it because specifically that contagion kit has ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. And these are the two compounds that have shown in hundreds of studies now to have potent antiviral activity against literally every single, not every single because they haven't all been tested, but almost every single-stranded RNA virus, which includes the hantavirus, it includes COVID, and it includes many, many others. And so it's nice to have that on hand in case you are exposed to any of these pathogens, or in the unfortunate circumstance that we would see some sort of bioterror attack.
Yeah, which is the last thing that we want. You got the contagion kit, and then Dr. McCullough pointed out when he was on the Real America's Voice show with me the other day that besides the contagion kit, you could get the field kit too. And the field kit has those things in it that you were mentioning. This is the biggest of all, the mother of all medication kits from the wellness company. This thing is pretty cool, isn't it?
That's pretty awesome. You'll be loaded up. You won't have a worry about an infectious disease. You'll have it all on hand.
You know what I was told? This is how much the wellness company loves me. I don't know if I should give this out, but I'm the only one of all your conservative talk show hosts and influencers that got a field kit. How about that?
The only one.
Do you know why? Because Dr. McCullough always calls me a prepper. He says, Grant, I know you're a prepper. Now I'm prepared, and I got a lot of ammunition, and I got some My Patriot Supply food, but I'm not really a prepper. I think he thinks I've got like a place in the woods and bunkers built and all this stuff. But anyway, we love Dr. McCullough. All right, so I told you about this this push for the vaccine. This is on, this is Sky News, so you can figure where their leanings are. Take a listen to this.
We need in Africa to start to say we must manufacture vaccines, medicines that we need, because we cannot on a daily basis, when we have an outbreak, to be on panic mode. Currently, I'm on panic mode because people are dying. I don't have medicines. I don't have vaccine to support countries. Yesterday, I called for a meeting of all partners. We have some candidate vaccine, some candidate medicine. We are pursuing this route. We hope that we can have something in the next coming weeks.
So here's where I want to be intellectually honest, right? If you're a medical professional and you're in the Congo and you start to see a case of Ebola, you're going to be very concerned and you want to be able to treat these people. And if there's not a lot of options, that's a problem. And I'm sure medicine, as you mentioned earlier, it can be a challenge in the Congo. But he says we've got some promising, developments. So what is the answer? You're going to test these developments on people like we did in the United States during COVID to great damage to the people that they were tested on?
Yeah, so you're right. It's obviously would be bad to be in the Congo right now. Again, you don't want to contract it. But my prediction would be what he's referring to is they may very well roll out some of these mRNA injections they've been developing for this and to basically test them on the people in the Congo, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda, and who knows, maybe all of Africa. And it'll probably be very dangerous. So we'll have to wait and see if they announce all of a sudden there's a new vaccine they're going to use. But I think that's a very likely scenario.
All right, let me ask you a tough question now, because I was never anti-vax. There was a time I got the flu shot, but I think I was like RFK Jr., who then realized that the flu shot wasn't even really working. I just stopped getting the flu shot. I went to Nicaragua. I got some vaccines when I went down there because I didn't want to get, malaria or something. And I got loaded up with vaccines. Now, that was probably 10 or 12 years ago. I don't know if I would do that again today. I still feel like if you could come up with a safe vaccine, that it would be a great thing. I mean, like, if it was safe, then you'd be helping people and stopping disease from spreading and saving some pain and suffering along the way. My question, I guess, is there such thing as a safe vaccine? Is it possible in the future to come up with a safe vaccine, or is every vaccine just dangerous?
Well, it would be definitely possible to come up with a safe vaccine. And when I say a safe vaccine, the requirement for that would be it would have to be non-toxic, no toxic materials in it, and it would not have to be directly injected into you, perhaps some sort of nasal spray. Now, we see all the approved vaccinations are developed. Most of them obviously are through intramuscular injection, and they literally all of them contain toxic components and toxic ingredients, and many of them are not very effective. And unfortunately, the current vaccine model is just simply driven by profit. They don't care about safety because they don't have to test them against placebos. So that's the problem with the vaccination arena.
So what's the answer? Because I am right when I say if you could have a safe vaccine that stopped disease from spreading, that would be a holy grail. I mean, why wouldn't we want that, right?
No, exactly. We want a vaccine that's not injected, that's non-toxic, that causes zero serious adverse events. In fact, we want zero adverse events. That's simply just safe, and that's what we want. Now,
does
things
that exist, Nicholas? Is there anyone that's like that?
I believe there's some under development that use different methods. But I'm not completely certain. Yeah. I'm not completely certain, and they'll never be approved.
So this is so disheartening because then in the end, where are we left? I'm left basically saying, don't get vaccines, don't get vaccinated.
Yep, that's where I'm at now. Unfortunately, all of the approved ones, they can't be trusted based on the safety studies they did, and based on the adverse event profiles. It's
Were
simply
you
not
always there.
I was there basically in ninth grade when I began high school, so I got there pretty early. So I haven't had obviously the only vaccines I had were the ones I got with my parents.
Right.
That was back when basically, there was almost nobody talking about how some of these could be dangerous. And so, but as the information started to come out, I would not elect to take a vaccination when the risk would be far higher from dying or having a serious adverse event from the vaccine compared to that infection that it's supposed to prevent.
Yeah. This is like the shingles vaccine. So I'm 57. All my buddies who are older than me are telling me you got to get this shingles vaccine. But I've come to the conclusion that most people, I don't know if anybody dies from the shingles. Do you? I mean, not really.
No, it's just painful.
It's
just
painful as shit. So if you get through it, but people have all kinds of crazy reactions to the vaccine. Maybe if I'm lying there in my bed with shingles, I'm going to be regretting it. But it seems to me like I don't want the side effects from it, which are pretty dangerous. And that's where I weigh the risk reward. And I think people need to do that for everything that they're putting in their body. And I mean everything you put in your body. Weigh the risk reward. All right, before I let you go, there was this story about this NIH scientist who got caught in an airport in the United States with monkeypox samples, apparently headed to a lab in Hamilton, Montana. My first job in TV was not far from there. I worked in Missoula and Kalispell, Montana for an NBC station there. Tim Sheehy, the politician from, is he a senator now? He's a senator now, I believe. Tim Sheehy, senator from Montana, is calling for an investigation into this, that he may have had Ebola samples with him, but we don't know, and there's a lot of secrecy surrounding this. What are you hearing?
Yeah, there's a lot of secrecy here. So literally what happened was Vincent Munster, this NIH virologist, he's deemed an Ebola expert. He has lots of labs and stations set up in the Congo to study Ebola. And he recently returned from the Congo, the same country where there is that new Ebola outbreak, with undeclared pathogen samples in his briefcase. He arrived at a U.S. airport, and they found these pathogens he was holding. He didn't file the proper paperwork, and now he's under investigation by the FBI. And so from the reporting I've seen, he had monkeypox samples and what they call select agents, or basically dangerous biological materials. So there could be other pathogens other than monkeypox. There could be Ebola, because we know he was an Ebola expert. That's literally why he's always in the Congo. He's always working with monkeypox. But the key thing about Vincent Munster, the man who's now under FBI investigation for smuggling the pathogens, is he was heavily involved in gain-of-function activities with SARS-CoV-2. He was on the Diffuse Project. He was helping basically collect bats and modify the coronaviruses to better infect humans. So you can't even make this up.
So all this stuff comes to me. One, it's got to be very dangerous to be taking these samples through an airport with everybody. I mean, just on the simple fact that, God forbid, you drop it or the plane gets, I don't know, like not a good idea, it seems to me. Two, they're still in NIH and CDC and HHS, these deep state, secretive scientists working on who knows what projects, even with RFK Jr. at the helm and him bringing in people. These people still operate in there, don't they?
They're still operating. They're still very much there. And it appears they're still doing dangerous activities related to pathogens. So, I would hope to see RFK, clean these people out of the agencies. They got away with the last pandemic. We don't want to let them get away with another one.
Isn't that truth? Nicholas Hulscher, it's always great seeing you. I always enjoy my talks. I urge people to follow you. Where can they find your Substack?
Yeah, thefocalpoints.com.
Thefocalpoints.com. Nicholas Hulscher with the Wellness Company. Thank you, buddy. And I'm going to tell people how they can get with the Wellness Company for all those great products. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You too. So Nicholas, it's always a pleasure having him on, because nobody researches this stuff like he does, folks. I mean, really. I love his association with the Wellness Company. Mine too. I'm proud of this company. Strong voices out there on the front lines, speaking truth, so you know what to believe, what not to believe. And the main thing is they got great products too. So go to twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. Remember, there's the contagion kit. There's the big field kit I talked to you about. There's a number of other prescription medication kits that I do believe every family should have in their household, just in case there was a power outage or a drugstore's closed down or there's a weather event, God forbid a terrorist event. You can't get to the drugstore. You have prescription medications on hand. So many other products, too. Remember, TheraBlue is my favorite. This is the peptide-based, deep penetrating pain gel. TheraBlue is getting it done for me. I urge you to check them out. And then, of course, Ultimate Spike Detox. Whether you've had COVID or you took the vaccine, this will get that spike protein out of your system. twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. That's going to do it for us today. I'll see you guys on the Real America's Voice show tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Thomas Massey on the chopping block. I hope this guy loses. We'll know tonight. Maybe not by the time my show is over, but we're going to cover it. So stay tuned for that tonight on Real America's Voice. Stinchfield 1776 on all the social media platforms. Please share and like this podcast with anyone you know. Stinchfield's Army rolls. We'll see you tomorrow.